The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Del Mar TV Foundation or the City of Del Mar.
Del Mar Hot Topics, where we discuss issues that are important to you. And now your host, Richard Levesque.
Most of us agree that Del Mar's a beautiful place to live. Hillside geography, village atmosphere, ocean and trees, and the ability to walk everywhere make it an ideal family town. Its beauty is reflected in the high price of real estate. Del Mar's nice, but could it be better? The ratio of allowable floor area to lot size has been largely successful at keeping homes to a tasteful size. But do the strict FAR rules inadvertently lead to Del Mar becoming a community of second homes and retirees? Do these guidelines exclude families, the lifeblood of a town? In most parts of town, people buying substandard lots under 10,000 square feet can only build 1,600 square feet of house above ground. Is that reasonable for a family of four in today's world? Where do basements, garages, patios, courtyards figure in this calculation? Would increased FARs improve the community? The fuss over mansionization seems to have died down, but it does reflect a bias against larger homes. I'm Richard Levesque, and you're watching Hot Topics. With me to discuss floor area ratio, bulk, size, livability of Del Mar homes is David Drucker, Del Mar City Council member, Benny Landman, Del Mar Realtor, and Ira Nelson, local resident. Let's start with David. Why do we need a floor area ratio? What is it?
Well, the floor area ratio basically is the ratio between the square foot of the lot versus the square foot basically of the living space in a house. The reason it was put in was to ensure that the development of Del Mar would be done on a more planned basis, where you wouldn't have huge houses next to small houses, or you would, and also you would be able to create a more livable community.
More livable as far as you're concerned, meaning smaller homes?
Well, just meaning that the community is a place where people feel comfortable, where there's lots of planting, where there's space between houses if in certain areas, and basically the property values of the houses can mature on a total basis rather than each individually being more expensive.
So you're saying livability in terms of aesthetics and values of prices. Benny, you're a realtor. Is the floor area ratio working in Del Mar?
From my point of view and my client's point of view, no. It's causing standardization of floor plans. Maybe they're not so much on the standardization of the elevation of the outside of the house, but on the standard inside, it's all the same. Most of the new houses today are built with the 2 bedrooms in the basement and the washroom, the living area in the middle, the master bedroom up on top. And what's happening, because of floor area ratio, is all of Del Mar, which had before big houses, little houses, old, new, that was the character of the neighborhood. Now it becomes a lot more cookie cutter.
So are you saying that one of the missions that David said was the purpose of the floor area ratio, which is aesthetics, you're saying it's not working for aesthetic reason? What about livability?
Well,
in terms of the size of the home.
It's also not working for livability. If we're dealing with lots that are converted, the substandard lots where you have 1,600 square feet livable and 400 for a garage, you can only come up with one design, which is this standard design. And what you're doing is you're taking an above ground community where we're looking at the ocean, getting the breezes, the vegetation, and putting a third of that underground, and we're missing that. So from a livability standpoint, I think it's a negative.
Okay. Ira, you live here, you're a resident. How's the floor area ratio working for you?
Well, I was well aware of the issue when we first moved here. I knew the requirements that the town imposed upon me, and I knew at the time that my particular residence was maxed out, that I could not add on any additional floor space because we had 25% of our footprint over the lot, and I could not add on at all. And I moved in knowing that. My concern today is not that I'm interested in changing the rules of the game in mid-game, except after living here for a while, I realize that what this has done to me in particular, and to a lot of other people I've spoken to, have prevented some flexibility in their family requirements. I know in town here now, with this FAR requirement that forbids any expansion past this in our zoning, 25% of lot size, it prevents families who have young children or additional children to add on an additional bedroom, 1 or 2 bedrooms, and restricts them and restricts those who want to have that flexibility. Life changes. Life is not static. Homes in Del Mar tend to be. So the issue is, in essence, how do we afford some flexibility to growing families or those families whose kids return, empty nesters whose kids return, and for a while I was in that case, or those who I believe the current phrase now is find themselves sandwiched between their younger children and their elderly parents. I had that issue myself. So I was looking for ways to increase or improve the livability, but I was restricted by the ordinance. And of course, since we are a government of laws, I didn't want to do anything surreptitiously. Although Lord knows, over the years, and I've discovered, a lot of that has been done in town. And I find it interesting that in David's definition of floor area ratio, he used the expression livable space. And we include the garage as livable space.
Great.
Well, I am hard-pressed to understand how we can include livable space by definition as garage.
Well, basically, I said more or less livable space. I understand that it does include garages, also includes enclosed patios and areas like that. The livability of Del Mar and the ability to create rules that are specific to families is very difficult. I mean, how do you enforce that, and how do you say that, we'll create this rule so a family can expand or something like that, or because of certain life experiences? We have to create, and there have to be rules that are based upon anybody that's going to live there, whether it be a single person, family, multiple families, whatever. And that makes it tough to create a rule that allows you that type of expandability.
But Del Mar is notoriously sclerotic. It's just very difficult to get anything done in Del Mar.
Well, I would disagree with that. 90% of all the projects that go through DRB go through with one hearing.
Yes.
So does that say it's difficult? Basically, there's some very strict rules. Those strict rules increase our property values rather than decrease them. People are trying to move into Del Mar. People are consistently enjoying Del Mar because of the quality of life that we have here.
So David is saying it ain't broke. Why do we want to fix it?
Well, I don't think we're asserting that there's breakage in town. I like the use of sclerotic. I think over the years, many designers and architects familiar with the process here in Del Mar have catered to their clients and focused on these issues and have delimited their plans based upon our restrictions, which is fine, understood. But apparently the architects and professionals have gotten better at it, and consequently, I would assume, get through the DRB more quickly and with fewer objections. However, I want to just reiterate that word flexibility. I can understand the interest in moving to Del Mar. Well, today also, our neighbors all over, whether it's Solana Beach or Carlsbad, are also enjoying tremendous accelerated increases in their real estate values. We are not, we don't own that by ourselves. The entire San Diego region has grown. And it would be nice to be able to afford to the homeowner a bit of flexibility, not only for anyone who presently, like myself, would like to enlarge their living area, in my case, by a moderate 200 square feet. But others who would want to add a couple of bedrooms for family reasons. If not for today's use, what about for resale value? Benny, as a realtor, I'm sure if I were to ask you, what would that do to my property value if I was able to tell a potential buyer that you now have the ability to add an extra room or two legally?
Right. It would increase it dramatically. I mean, right now.
Yeah, actually, I would totally disagree with
No.
that. And there was a study that was done by George Mason University that says, what are private governments worth? And basically, this was a very scientific study that basically says those areas with restrictive zoning actually provide more value for the community. And it actually is equal to one bedroom. In other words, a person that moves into a more restrictive zoning area is willing to give up one bedroom rather than live in an unrestricted area.
What about the people that we've lost to Solana Beach? And I hate to use
And
the
you
term,
know,
lost to Solana Beach because they couldn't.
Because they didn't want to live in Del Mar.
No, it's not because they didn't want to live in Del Mar.
He
Del Mar
knows
was
though,
always
right?
the first choice.
No, but the thing is
they didn't want to. I'm sorry. They
No, go on.
didn't want to live in 1,600 square feet.
But you're able to build, and that's another interesting thing. What you said is everything becomes cookie cutter. If you drive through town and you look at the new houses, they're incredibly different. I mean, there's two houses that have just been built in my neighborhood. One is, I would consider cookie cutter. The other one is an incredible house that is incredibly beautiful with stonework on the outside. It does have 2 bedrooms on the underground, and the people really enjoy living in it.
David, I don't think we're discussing those kind of amenities, the exterior. We're really talking about floor plan and family use.
How many bedrooms?
And how the floor plan functions.
Right.
When we moved into our house 13 years ago in Del Mar, we were not thrilled with our floor plan. Actually, we were unhappy with it. But Del Mar being Del Mar, and Dave's point notwithstanding, there were so many advantages to living in Del Mar that we sacrificed a better floor plan for the lot and property we had. They had many other things going for it. However, since it was not my ideal floor plan, over the years we decided that we would like to improve it. And within the confines of the regulation, we were stymied. We could not make any changes within the existing floor plan that was suitable for us. And if we could only add on this, and in our case, merely 200 square feet, which would conform to every existing regulation, whether or not it was plot lines, views, DRB regulations, it conformed to everything. Not only that, it would have absolutely no impact on bulk or mass, and wouldn't even be noticeable by any of our neighbors. So it occurred to me, I said, wait a second, this minor modification would not impact anybody else, even though it is against existing regulations. Why not look at the existing regulation and see how much sense it makes, not only for me, but other people who want some flexibility? And that's how I got involved in this situation.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Hold your thoughts. We'll come right back to it. We're talking about floor area ratios, hot topics. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
Help us turn up the heat on Del Mar Hot Topics. Share your ideas or suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at hottopics@delmartv.com.
Welcome back to Hot Topics. Here with me are David Drucker, Benny Landman, and Ira Nelson. We're in the middle of floor area ratio. You had a question.
I was listening to you, and you sounded really frustrated about this extra 200 feet that was possible to do, but really the city is saying not to do it. And it's not. It's very common. I hear people that come to Del Mar first. Del Mar, I got to preface, is everybody's first choice. Then they get down to what they can or cannot build, and then they start rethinking it. There's got to be a solution. I mean, there's a couple of solutions, but we're talking about two.
I understand your question, and I put a lot of thought into this. My wife and I knocked this around quite a bit, trying to figure out how could we accomplish what we want to accomplish legally. And we realized, of course, since according to the current ordinance, I couldn't do that, I had to look at the ordinance, and I'm looking at the FAR requirements and the inclusion of the garage as living space. And I came from a community back east, a similar sized community. and there the garage was not included in the square footage of the house. And as I look around in our neighborhoods here, we are one of the only communities that includes the garage in this calculation. So it occurred to me, if we could extricate, disengage, separate the garage from what David asserted was perhaps part of living space, which in fact it isn't, irrespective of the fact that many homeowners over the years have used their garages and converted them to living space and made bedrooms out of them illegally. Irregardless of that issue, I wanted to participate legally in this expansion. So if we could disengage the garage from the calculation, leave all other calculations the same, leave all regulations the same, DRB regulations the same, setback regulations, and if I would conform to all existing municipal regulations by just adding on these few hundred square feet, by disengaging the garage and thereby conforming, it would solve the problem.
What would that do from your perspective?
Well, again, David disagrees, but from my perspective, from a buyer out there that now has the ability to pick up an extra 400 square feet minimum on a house, a bedroom and a bathroom, that would change dramatically, would change his lifestyle if they had a child or an extra child or somebody else living, extended relative
living. The word flexibility comes to mind.
Well, very flexible.
The problem is that what that does, though, is enlarges the footprint, because we need to have garages for off-street parking. We don't want people parking on the street. I mean, that's important.
It does.
Because that is, it's one, unsightly, and two, we are in certain areas of the
But David, we're not talking about garage or no garage.
Yeah,
the requirements for garages are the same.
But the thing is what that does then is increases the amount of space that is used by each of the houses. And one of the reasons that we have this is to ensure that there is modicum amount of building, number one, but also there's a lot of space between houses,
Dave,
so there's
you have
vegetation.
setbacks front, back, and side to include
And
green space.
then you're going to have to go up.
Well,
instead of going 26 feet, you're going to have to go up. I mean,
in some cases, you can still extend out the back and still have your minimum. Sure, you will. There's a ton.
And
on
there is
substandard lots,
they're
they're minus 10,000. That's a
you
big
can go up
lot.
now as long as you conform. If you can conform to DRB regulations, you can go up.
But you can only go up to 26 feet.
So?
And basically that's two stores.
We're not advocating any change whatsoever. Merely disassociate the garage from the calculation.
And again, what that does is allows.
It's true. But what they're saying is it's 400 square feet that in their opinion it would make Del Mar more livable
and again,
without ruining aesthetics.
Well, you'd have more flexibility.
It's interesting. We're talking about 400 square feet. I guess a maximum up to 400 square feet.
Yes.
And if we look at just the percentage, just the raw numbers for a moment, if we take a lot, my lot, for example, is about 11,000 square feet. And I'm thinking 4% of 400 square feet of 11,000 is what percent? And we're thinking about bulk and mass. It is within that 3-4% margin of error that most economists discuss, plus or minus. It's barely noticeable. Aesthetically, it would not impinge.
Well, it's also a design function. You get a great architect to say, okay, how do we make it
look? Architects are working here and doing a great job.
But none of them will come on the show because they're scared stiff to say anything that could ruin their chances of getting things through the process. We couldn't get anyone else to come on the show, David.
Well,
there's an example of 2 houses being built right now in Del Mar where the basement area, the floor area in the basement is wider than the living area on the first floor.
And that's what people have chosen to do.
No, that's not. That's a speculative venture. That's
again,
that's somebody hoping that's what the public will want.
Well, then,
but that's not the reality.
What's wrong with the rule then?
Well,
if the speculator is
saying, in reality, that you got one person that can live. No, that you can live upstairs, and the rest of the people live in the basement.
But the speculator is basically saying, I can sell this house. And if he is, I mean, that's incredible.
Wait, speculation means it's not. There's a risk involved. He's not. He's saying I'm going to give it a try.
But, I mean, he wouldn't do it unless he thought he could make the money. I mean,
but
that's crazy.
There's a minefield of dead speculators out there.
Okay, let Ira say one more word. No, that's good.
He's speculators. I'm not even looking at it from that business point of view. And I appreciate being an agent, a real estate agent here in town. Of course, it is your concern. I'm talking about the residents who are living here in the community,
Right.
and many of whom have growing families and find themselves constrained, inflexible in what they can do with their house. And this modicum, to use David's word, this modicum of change that would not impact visually neighbors, anything else, would afford this couple, this family, this growing family, that flexibility. And it would.
You can't make the rules based upon who's going to live in the house. You make the rules so that anybody coming in has the same rules. Because eventually, everybody sells their house.
Right, but
rules
we're
change.
saying,
Rules
change the rules.
You're saying change the rules.
Families change, life changes,
To open
nothing
up,
aesthetic.
to open up, first of all,
And that-
if
Because
you add-
1,600 square feet does not work
But
for families.
1,600 square, I don't know where.
David,
you-
what we're getting
I don't know where
is-
you're coming up with 1,600
Well, on a
square feet.
substandard lot, you have
But-
2,000 square feet, 4 of which goes to garage and 1,600 which goes to living.
If it's substandard, but
If
you
it's
don't.
substandard.
But if you don't, most of the lots are not substandard.
And substandard is below 10,000, which is still a very
But
large
10,000 square feet, you have 25% floor
For
area
a
ratio.
ratio,
That's
which takes you back down to
2,500 square feet.
Most people that want to get into Del Mar have children. There's a family situation.
I
It's
had
very
2
tight.
children in my house. Number one, when I first moved to Del Mar, I kind of thought that, we're not being family friendly because we don't allow. I had 2 children. The house that I lived in was built for 4 children. It's a 2,500 square foot house. There are plenty of families that are moving
I know,
into
and
town.
my grandparents lived in a cold water flat on the Lower East Side.
Right.
But
we
the
can talk
problem-
about that.
We're
But
talking
it's
now-
Del Mar.
Go on.
Things have changed. This is the people want.
I
People
realize-
want
people
to be in
want-
Well, the
Del
city
Mar.
council will not do anything without getting a lot of public input because they're afraid of people's disapproval.
Well-
So go with it. You've got something.
Listen, Richard.
Of course.
I'm listed. My name, Ira Nelson. I'm listed in the phone book. My email address, iranelson@pacbell.net. Email me. Maybe there are other people out there who feel the same way that Benny and I feel about this issue. Like to get some input, some comment. Maybe there is a groundswell, a grassroots approach to this issue, and maybe there are many people here that would like to see the town offer some flexibility without changing any other regulations.
Changing the rules to
Just get a hold
exclude
of
the
me,
garage.
and perhaps we can
problem
put
is-
something on the ballot.
Go on, David.
Yeah,
'Cause
at this point, it would have to go on the ballot because basically
Right.
the bottom line is the community plan was endorsed by the community.
Right.
And to change that floor area ratio, it would take a community initiative.
Well, would you be open to it if the community supports Sarah? That's what this purpose of this TV show is, to see how much are people's views changing. Or would you resist it on principle?
Well, the devil obviously is in the details, number one. I mean, you can't be flexible. In other words, you have to create
A new rule.
new rules that are saying this is what it looks like, and everybody gets it then. And that, could ultimately change the character of Del Mar. And if that does change the character of Del Mar, it could ruin the character of Del Mar.
Well,
because
how would it ruin it, though? I don't
because
understand.
again,
He has passion about this, clearly. Go on.
Well, no, but I don't know. I want to know what a ruin means, because an extra 300 or 400 square feet is going to ruin Del Mar.
and
It's
basically,
400 square feet.
400.
Yeah.
what it could do is allow people to build bigger houses
Of
and
course.
therefore not have the smaller houses in town. And also it could ultimately reduce the amount of value of the houses overall in Del Mar.
I recall that the biggest issue for a while was mansionization.
Right.
People concerned about people coming in, buying up a couple of lots, two lots, and putting up a much larger domicile that would be out of proportion to the community. This has absolutely nothing to do with that. We're talking about minor modifications, allowing the flexibility of a family to make small changes, not impacting bulk, not impacting mass, not
But
impacting
it does.
setbacks
Well,
or
there's a
height.
small amount. There's a
But-
small change,
but
right? 400
but
square
for
feet.
small-
Well, if
That's
the
what people are
DRB
talking.
finds it offensive and knocks it down, so
But
be it.
the problem is the DRB cannot say you cannot build to the max. They can say we don't like the way it looks, we don't like the way it fits in the neighborhood, but when you build to the max, if you're going to build your 2,500 square feet on a 10,000 foot lot, the DRB is not going to turn around and say, nope, you can only have 2,100 square feet.
That's right. But David, would you oppose it? Again, you're a council member, you're an elected representative. If there was a groundswell of opinion that said, we would like to tweak, no one wants Cardiff and no one wants Pacific Beach.
Well, the other interesting thing is that Solana Beach now, Beverly Hills, places up and down the coast are thinking about how do we reduce.
You want no change, zero.
I'm not saying I don't want no change, but I think we just have to look, to just say we can add this and it will have no effect is not the correct way to look at it.
Well, it'll be crazy for them. Go on.
Maybe Dave has an idea how you can help us. If the garage disengagement you find inappropriate for whatever reason, do you have any other ways, without circumventing existing regulations, how young families or people like us, established families, or those that may eventually want to move in?
If there's a way that I could create based upon who lived, and that's not possible. It's got to be based upon the zone and the community as a whole.
Can you tell me how the garage wound up being incorporated into that in the first place? Why are we one of the few communities anywhere to include
We have
that?
just a couple of seconds left. Quickly, anything about why we included it?
Because it
2 words.
is part of the way the house is being developed on the lot in terms of its bulk and mass.
Perfect. That's all we have. You can see that was a hot topic. I'm Dr. Richard Levesque, and I'd like to thank David Drucker, our City Council member, Benny Landman, Del Mar Realtor, and Ira Nelson for being part of our show today. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Additional support provided by Clone Duplicating and Printing in the heart of the Del Mar Village. Copies of this program are available at the Del Mar Library, 1309 Camino Del Mar.